Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of Forged in Fire. I am your co-host, Nate Farm-Reedon. I'm going to introduce my right-hand man. Come on up, Cole. How you doing, brother?
Yo, Nate, what's going on? How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm still fired up, brother. We've got a lot of exciting things happening, a lot of exciting things that have happened. That's kind of got me riding the high, man. How about you?
Dude, it's good. I mean, there's so much going on. We talked about it before. We had, a lot of good stuff going on with our event. I think we're buying a new headquarters, a new office building. So that's exciting. And we close our big property in 10 days now. So, man, there's so much exciting stuff that we are fired up about. So I'm with you. Second to that, I'm sure you are too, but I'm super fired up for our guest today. Such a cool story, something that we've touched on before. So it'll be cool to revisit this. But before we get into that, as always, let's hit a couple housekeeping things, right? So first, please leave us a rating and review. We want to grow. We want to educate others. That's how we do this. Second, of course, subscribe. I don't need to tell you why. Third, we have another event coming up. Like I said, the last one was huge. We did it really, really successfully. And we're excited to help other people join us and kind of grow as well. And so we're going to put all the details for that below. So please check the show notes, click that link, register for it, and we'll see you there. We'll give you more updates as this progresses. But lastly, buckle up. It's going to be a hell of a ride.
Oh, dude, it's going to be so good. So today we're actually bringing a guest that we had on our previous Views MMM podcast. His name's Matthew. He's done a tremendous job in the industry. He deals in tech. He's the CEO of Building PropTech Incorporated. Matthew, come on stage, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How you doing today, bro?
Good morning. Thanks for having me back, Nate, Cole. It's good to be here. I had a blast on the last one. You guys bring great energy, and I'm excited to see what we unveil today. All the inner secrets of an entrepreneur.
I love it, man. Bottom of our hearts, man. It's been a pleasure. It's going to be a privilege having you on. So tell us a little bit about the journey. What have we missed? Fill us in, kind of what got you here, what brought you here.
Well, since we last spoke, I've made quite a pivot in terms of what I'm doing in business and who I really am as an entrepreneur. But just to do a quick recap of what it's been like the past however many years of building stuff and putting it together. I got my start when I was programming servers as a youngster. I got into writing. I was always writing. I wrote a 30,000 word manuscript when I was in fifth grade. That's a little, that's a level of insanity for a 9-year-old. But then I ended up publishing a book when I was in high school, 90,000 words, got that out there, had my first taste of rejection when I reached out to all these publishers and agents, and they're turning me down because 17-year-olds don't know how to sell books. And to be honest, I didn't. Inevitably, it didn't hit the target audience that I was looking for, but at least I had this under my belt. There's not many published author 17-year-olds. I got into music after that. I really thought I'd be down the creative route. And so I was producing stuff, composing it, putting it out there, getting feedback from people. And once again, I didn't really strike gold, but I had so much fun doing it. And, seeing that there wasn't a career in it, but I still enjoyed it, put it on the back burner for the while and decided to see what I could do next. Tried out e-commerce, setting up one of those stores. Can't really say that I had success with that either. There's so much that goes into e-commerce, and if you're not super passionate about it and one of those drop shipping gurus, then you might not get too far. And that's not really the path that I had in store for myself. So then I made a transition to the stock market and options. And I thought that this was going to be a way to get wealthy really quick. That's kind of everyone's dream when you're first in the market. But I have to say, what it did give me a wealth of was knowledge, because now where I am in commercial real estate, decentralized finance, tokens and tokenization, all the stuff that's happening, it actually traces back to capital markets. It's all about finance. It's about leverage and loans and trade finance, all these different components that I was exposed to some 5 years ago when I first got into the markets, but didn't really realize the potential of it or its application outside of clicking buy and sell on a stock chart. So, the past 4 or 5 years has been all about tokenization. Last episode had a lot of great details about tokenization and how That's really just using the blockchain to record transactions. So a blockchain is a ledger that isn't going to be manipulated. We're all recording information, but it's even better to record information if it's not at risk of being manipulated. In a real estate like in an industry like real estate, there's so many stakeholders. There's so many opportunities for things to go wrong. What data are we collecting? How is it being stored? Where is it being used again? When was it last updated? Do the institutions trust this? Are they going to underwrite it? There's so many reasons to start building in a system that records all of this information and ensures that it can't be compromised. And so that's sort of like the underlying thesis for a blockchain. It's just a better way to record stuff and add transparency. Initially, I set out to more so democratize real estate. And I think that's such a noble mission, but there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into that. So before we even talk about, hey, let's get everyone into real estate, first we have to figure out how to actually get real estate on chain, how to get the institutions interested in it, how to de-risk this alternative asset class. And so this forced me to find new uses for blockchain, perhaps in construction, in project management, in the accounting process, and auditing. And although initially it was a setback where I realized, okay, what I set out to do is not immediately accessible to me. It's sort of too big of a dream. It's still something good to aspire to, but I need to figure out all the steps there. It was great that this became my journey, that I had to figure this out, because this is where we are finding more market fit. Real estate developers are saying, oh, this is actually really practical for us. We could totally see how having a better way to store asset information across its full life cycle could save us money, could add value to that property. The institutions are saying the same thing, or the insurance companies. Oh, you're making it really easy for us to inspect these properties. Cost savings, value add, right there. And when you have that market fit and you resonate with people's problems, your whole job becomes so much easier. Again, it's good to have a vision and that big dream, and people will applaud that. But can you sell it? Are you going to be quick to monetize it? And sometimes the answer is no. In this case, it was a maybe. It wasn't a no, but it was a maybe. And we just had to figure out some other things before we got there.
Love that. So there's so much I want to go into there, but I'm not going to breach the subject yet. So you kind of talked about your very, very, very beginning intro, writing that manuscript, getting a taste of kind of life, rejection, how things ran. And now you're building this company now. So why go into PropTech? And you touched on it a little bit, but I want to hear some more details. Like, what was it that inspired you? You kind of mentioned the mission that you had, right? And the kind of the cause, but was there anything underlying that you just liked it? You're just naturally good at this kind of thing, or just tell me more. Anything else there?
Well, I think real estate in general maintains my fascination. It is impressive, the scale of it, the beauty of it. If you look at the skyline of any city, what you are looking at is commercial real estate, the skyscrapers and the parks that weave between that, urban planning, how we've come together to engineer our cities. All of this is about real estate, the scale of that and the impact that it can have. I feel touches my heart, and especially knowing that this is something that if you put a lot of thought and emotion into, if you impact this industry, you are impacting the world. And that's so awesome. Now, from a business perspective, it happens to be that cities have so many problems, and they never cease to have problems. Cities, real estate, construction, property, wherever you want to go in that route, or even basic engineering or architecture, if you start to make it more granular. Each of these have so many problems that need to be solved. And this industry, beyond all others, has lagged in productivity, in innovation, in advancement, in leaders who are stepping up and trying to be honest and develop solutions. So there's such an opportunity for people who say, actually, I don't want to benefit from information corruption, or the fact that the real estate market is super opaque and always has problems, I'm not going to be the one to make money off of that, or I'm going to step in and, take a management fee when I shouldn't, or take a little bit more off the top than I ought to. There's little ways that people start to extract value, especially when you have institutions, and some of it is warranted. Of course, everyone plays a role here, but this is an industry where after a while you have 10 intermediaries every step of the way, and all of these are dollar signs that are disappearing. So there's just so many issues that are prevalent in such a fascinating, large industry like cities, real estate, that urban development component. I would say my fascination for this really grew when I started to travel internationally, because I could see how different places were going about this. And it turns out the US is not as modern or proficient or efficient when it comes to urban planning as we think we are. And so again, seeing what the rest of the world is doing, I think we can step in here and make it better for people, make it better for civilization, society, and our future.
I love this 1,000%. And a lot of it resonates with me. And one of the common themes that I'm seeing is entrepreneurs in and of themselves all have like a common trait where we can identify and kind of see the larger picture. And then we kind of figure out how we can kind of adjust and make small tweaks to make it better. And I can just hear your passion and you put a lot of thought and energy behind your craft. And I can see and I can feel your emotion behind it. And like, okay, this is something that the world should become kind of enlightened to, and this is how we're going to be able to inform and pass along knowledge. So hats off to you on that. But one of the things I wanted to know in this realm specifically on the entrepreneurship side, what kind of challenges and adversities have you personally faced trying to get things off the ground and get things moving?
Every challenge and piece of adversity, to be quite honest. I really haven't had a day where it's like, oh, everything's working out, this is so wonderful. It's been an uphill battle, interpersonally, or internally, and the industry at large that we're taking on. At first, it was really hesitant to any sort of technological change. Now we're starting to see a little bit of a shift. And so my job as a tech entrepreneur has become a little bit more easy, but it's still far from being easy in and of itself. But we are seeing a change in mentality where the commercial real estate or real estate industry at large is looking for new technologies to come forth. And so they're embracing startups a little bit more. And whether that's the sales process, fundraising, or just trying to make a name for myself, that's become less of a hassle and a little bit, I feel a little bit more welcomed, because over the years, or even, beyond our time, if you think about decades ago, technology and commercial real estate, it wasn't quite the mix. It's always been the mentality that I'm just going to do things the way that I've always done them. On top of that, you have the struggles of a startup that you face every single day. And it's always like a chicken and egg or rock and hard place scenario. It's like, I got to get customers, I got to get capital, I need one to acquire the other. And then there's always timelines that are dependent on each other. I have to get this product to market, but I also have to take care of these expenses, and I have to hide a number of these problems in order to attract capital. And you're always doing this balancing act, which is just so much stress on top of the usual day-to-day operations, where you are also wearing so many hats and you're responsible for marketing. You got to make sure that marketing is pristine. And it's not just the graphics, it's the message, it's the brand. What's the personality embodied into the name of your company? How are people going to perceive that? One error in that place can set you back so much if people start to perceive you in a bad light. So you have that. So you have your product, which you need to develop. You have the sales process, finding people who are going to work with you. There's so many challenges stacked on top of each other. And being in such a new industry like blockchain or artificial intelligence, I feel like these are really amplified. And that's going to happen with any frontier technology, but it makes the burden just a little bit more to bear. And you've got to have such a strong spirit to get through that, and mentality and physicality, because it eats away at you. You're going to sleep a little worse. You're going to be a little bit more stressed. For the first time more recently, when things really hit the fan, I've like started to get these stomach aches. And I was reading about Elon Musk, same thing would happen to him. And so I kind of took comfort in that. But like when massive stress, when his rockets were blowing up, he would just feel so sick to his stomach. And it messes with your day, because that's what you're thinking about. Nonetheless, we persevere, because again, I almost feel like it's my responsibility to take that vision for the future that I see, whether it's the use of the technology, the synergy between people and stakeholders, and the increased productivity and better cities, a better civilization. Take that that futuristic vision and make it a reality. Like, I feel like that's my job, and fundamentally it is, but
I love that.
I feel like it's a calling even.
And I think that's awesome. And one of the things I just want to touch on there that I think is so important is I feel like entrepreneurs are kind of like stewards of like the future in a way. Like, it's our job to innovate and to bring this vision that we all kind of collectively have and want, but into reality. But that's a lot of weight and it's a lot of stress to carry. And unfortunately, it's on those of us that choose to do it. And so, usually you get rewarded for that in terms of monetary, like the more value you provide to the world, you're almost always rewarded, the same. But nonetheless, like you said, there's still a lot of challenges and things to it. And it's cool to hear your story, all the different pieces to it, and how you've expanded, grown, and you touched on perseverance, right? Like, you don't stop, you just pivot and you change. And we talk about that with almost every single person that's on here. They all run into these ridiculous challenges, and none of them that are successful quit. They just pivot, or they stick it out, and they wind up in a much, much better place afterwards. Speaking of challenges, right now is a very difficult time to raise funding. It's something that we talk about specifically in the real estate world and syndications, and just all businesses do it usually in some capacity, depending on where they are. But I know you've raised some capital in the past. So I want to ask, how was your experience with that? Any tips to share with people that, are getting into it or struggling with it right now?
Well, I would be impressed if it's anyone's favorite part of the job. There's nothing like talking to strangers and asking them for their hard-earned money to support your crazy vision, even if you have traction and momentum, because there's that element of risk. And I think what your full-time job becomes is de-risking the business and then telling people how you've de-risked the business. That's pretty much what every single conversation comes down to. And if you can do that, and if you can relay that and put on a nice smile in doing so, you are likely, or at least more likely, to attract capital. Still, finding people out there who are writing checks and are in your industry and actually understand what's going on, it's such a numbers game, because there's a very small percentage of people who are going to meet your qualifications, or at least everything that you need to line up that warrants, dollar signs on an email actually showing up in your bank account. But the piece of advice is just de-risking. If you can look over every single way that this business idea might fail, whether it's how you get to market, your distribution plan, what you're doing to publicize it, who you're going to hire, how you're going to spend that money, how you're not going to spend that money and preserve it for as long as possible. If you can just tell that story really well, and then de-risk you as a founder, as an entrepreneur, and demonstrate, hey, I've got the grit, I've got the perseverance. Here's a list of things that have gone wrong in my life, and I figured out solutions. So therefore, the next time I face a problem, you can count that I have some sort of wisdom that's going to help me get over that problem. And therefore, your investment is safe with me.
Dude, that is so good. I love it. I love it. I love it. So help me understand and kind of paint the picture, especially for our listeners as well. What a normal scenario or best case scenario would look like for somebody that's working with you. I don't know if you would consider them partners, clients. And then from there, once somebody works hand in hand with you, what would the ideal market look like that you're going to then invest in or collaboratively work behind? How does that go? Kind of paint the picture for me.
From like a customer perspective?
Correct. From a customer perspective, as well as then from an owner perspective on what you and the customer then do hand in hand collectively.
Yeah, so right now, our ideal customer profile are these real estate developers, people who are going out, building things from the ground up, and they want a better way to collect that data that, from the feasibility to construction, then during operations, handover, and the longevity of that property. They're thinking, how are we going to collect this? What's the right way to verify this information? If we're going to use AI on our properties, how do we get ready for that? If we want to raise capital, how do we de-risk this and add transparency and trustworthiness to this property? And so what we're doing is we're providing them a space to do that, to add validity, attestation of the information that they're bringing us. We're also helping them structure it. So imagine down the road that your investor essentially wants to communicate with the property. How is the performance? When is the HVAC going to have an issue? How does this affect our pro forma? And be able to interpret these components of the property because, one, we've collected the data. Two, we know it's up to date and has all the authority we need to trust it. And third, it's been prepared in a modernized way that we can utilize it. And this is great for any sort of stakeholders, because if you're a current real estate developer and you want to sell that property, you're going to want to get every dollar out of it. If you're buying that property, you want to know every piece of information you can to really know that you are acquiring what you think you are acquiring, to be able to scan through that, but then to also do that at scale, to look over millions upon millions of data points and do that proficiently. Then there's another more visionary perspective that we have, which is the smart city thesis. Once we have all these buildings, they're equipped with technology, how do they start to interact with one another? How do we measure environmental impact? How do we use IoT, whether it's different sensors, servers, cameras, to orchestrate these properties? On top of that, how do we start to do that at scale? So if you have 10 properties, could you manage it as seamlessly as one property because you have such transparent insight into these, aided by artificial intelligence? Then there's the decentralized finance components, and we're really excited for that. I'd say one of the most pronounced opportunities is the collateralization of an alternative asset. So in private markets, they're private, they're opaque. Sometimes it's really tough to do that because they're risky assets. But again, if we can de-risk something, that's a really big opportunity, and say that this is worthy collateral, and then you could obtain higher capital efficiency, invest in a ground up development, then take a loan out against that and reinvest that into a cash flowing property. Now you've just duplicated your money and you've deployed it into two assets. So that's sort of working relationship with property owners right now.
Love that. So I want to dance back real quick to risk, right? We've talked about risk. You brought up a couple times, and it's apparent in everything we do, right? That's what business is. It's kind of evaluating risk and how to, like you said, reduce it. And if you can do that, whether it's in capital, that's an investment, that's kind of where your delta is, because investing is not investing without risk. That's the entire thesis. So you kind of mentioned earlier ways to reduce risk, whether it's explanations, whether it's on the asset side itself, whether it's data. But I guess my question is, what are some ways, or do you think there are other ways to reduce risk other than experience? Meaning a lot of it is your experience and your capability to handle a wrong situation. So are there any other ways that you can think of to reduce risk, whether it's with a business starting, an investment, or whatever, outside of yourself?
Well, if it's not your own experience, because we could break that down into knowledge and wisdom. the knowledge to put together an accurate pro forma, the knowledge to have an attractive website that educates people, the knowledge to have a proper onboarding process. So I think experience is really hard to write off. But if it's not your own, have you built a team to fortify any weaknesses that you might have? Do you have industry professionals, people who have been there, done that, folks who are going to help you through the fire and the flames to come out the other end? Nate, you're smiling. I was trying to think if I could get like a forged in fire, pun in there, but fire and flames, cuts it. You need those people around you, and that's fundamentally what we want to uncover on this podcast. When you're going through it, have someone else done it and been strengthened by it? And if you can learn from those people as well and pull in their wisdom, which is, again, what an opportunity like this on a podcast does. If you can learn from other people's wisdom and say, hey, I know I haven't sold a company for 100 million, but this person has, and I'm really adamant about extracting their wisdom and knowledge and applying it here. That is so great as an entrepreneur and for anyone investing into you or working with you.
Jesus. Anybody listening, just at this moment, hit pause, hit rewind, play this whole thing all the way back. So many nuggets, so many golden gems have just been dropped. And there's this weird, especially in the real estate realm, and Cole and I, we joke about this consistently, but when we were younger, we were just getting started. It was a whole lot of me, I wear all the hats, I do all of this because I'm not trusting anybody else. There was nothing about leveraging on the strengths of anybody else to be able to sort of see the larger picture or to sharpen our weaknesses. And what you just said in the last, 3 minutes, amazing, mind blowing, and that's exactly what this is all about. Real estate, entrepreneurship, all of it, team sport, leverage one another, work together collectively, figure out how to build, grow, and then identify folks that can be able to do it. One of my favorite books, Who Not How, Dan Sullivan, right? You figure out and you find the people that you can put in the right seats to be able to then propel and move the dream and the vision and the goal forward. Even just moving that needle just a bit is still steps in the right direction. Hats off to you for identifying it, Matthew. Oh my gosh. So, and now I've got to ask now. So, what's going to look like for your future outlook in terms of steps moving and either bringing people on for the team, rather it's then identifying the developers, rather it's figuring out for the market? What does it look like? Paint the picture 1 year, 5 year, 10 year.
Well, over the next year, I have to say that getting some massive feedback. Do you hear that? Okay.
Try it again.
I'm still hearing it. Nate, I think it's coming through your mic. So over the next year, I think the massive priority for me is going to be capital, which I'm not too excited about. Again, raising capital isn't the most thrilling part of the job, but it's necessary and I respect the process. So that's one portion of it. And then it's going to be a really ambitious, exhausting sprint to get out to market and get as much market share as possible. And I have a lot of speaking opportunities internationally to really help this happen. We recently incorporated internationally as well. So we're working on Eastern Asian expansion, Middle Eastern expansion, working with property owners in Europe. And more recently, I have a few new real estate contacts even in Africa, in Nigeria. So I'm working to the best of my abilities to get on all of the different continents and start to grow there. And naturally, all the resources necessary to actually fuel that growth. And it's challenging, but we should be able to do it in the next 12 months. So getting the product out there, getting people to vouch for the product, to be ambassadors of what we're building on across borders, across cultures. And that's going to be its own learning experience where you have this global initiative that you need to support. And then moving from that 12-month vision to what's happening in the next 3 years. Can we have sustainable growth? Can we bring on a lot of high quality executives and builders and folks who are going to roll up their sleeves and make this happen and hopefully embody the same level of passion that I have and take a part of building and make it their own and then build on top of that. And I can imagine that's going to be occupying a lot of my time, where I'm making that shift from doing it myself to teaching other people how to do what I've done and how to absorb all this industry knowledge and become experts in the same way that I've been able to. 5 years from now, I haven't a clue, right? Anything could happen at that point, but over the next year and 3, it's going to be that global expansion, people oriented, despite being in a technological age. Capital.
Love that. Love that. Well, I think it's that time for the hot seat. Nate, would you agree?
Oh, I agree, 1,000%. It's definitely time. Put them in the hot seat. Let's do it.
All right.
nervous.
You probably remember this from last time, but we're just going to ask you some quick fire round questions. You can answer however you want. We're going to do our best to not comment, and then we'll wrap up. Hit it. What separates entrepreneurs from the rest of the crowd?
We gotta restart that cutout there. I'm not sure what happened.
Hold on, let's try this.
It sounded like a fire extinguisher blew into the mic and then you just got drained
That's so
out.
strange. All right, let's try it again. What separates top performing or investors from the rest of the crowd?
Top performing people. You got to be more assertive. You have to want it more. You can't quit. You have to be less likely to quit. You just have to be more ferocious. I don't know how else to say it. Like in a group of 99% of people, you need to be the 1%. You got to be on top. And that's what's going to separate you from the pack. You're the one who's going the extra mile. You're staying up late. You're taking risks that other people would never, ever dare to do so. That's what's going to create you as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as someone who is developing a legacy in real time, someone worth remembering.
Oh, I love that. What's a daily habit that's contributed to your success?
I have a number of daily habits. I think exercise is great. Going for walks is great. I think standing at my desk instead of sitting is great, but those are all menial things. I think one of the best habits is that I pick out like 1, 2, 3, or 4 things that I'm going to get done for the day. And I say, and I'll kind of like think about it the night before. I have to reach out to these investors tomorrow. I have to write up this newsletter. I need to put together a list for this. I got to find sponsors for this event. Like I'll identify what I need to allocate 4, 5, 6 hours to. Then when the day comes, I will make sure that gets done. You know, if you just keep pushing it off, then tomorrow you're going to have to do 30 hours of work in a 16-hour span, and that's not possible. So you got to map out what you want to do and then actually go out and do it for that day.
I can't hold my tongue. I love that. We call them MINs, your most important next step, and we say the exact same thing to everybody we talk to or teach, and it's just what are those couple things that actually propel you forward? And I love that. What is your favorite? No, I'm sorry. What is your piece of advice you'd give to yourself if you were starting again?
Well, inadvertently, you might start again anyways. There's always going to be this cycle of going out, starting something, it grows, maybe it succeeds, maybe it doesn't, and then you're going to have a new chapter. Like no matter what, you're going to be starting something, you're going to be building something, you're going to be learning from it, and it's going to become an era, a segment in your life. And I wish I would have identified that a little bit earlier. I would have let go of things that needed to be let go of. I would have started on other initiatives a little bit earlier, but you don't realize how cyclical it is until you're actually in it. And it's just a part of life. Like I feel like I'm starting anew now. So over the past few months, I was thinking like, what would I have liked to have known as I was starting over, building from scratch and comparing it to the last time I did it? And what's it going to be like the next time, and just trying to reflect on that, doing a little bit of journaling and pulling away, this is how you got to trust people. This is how you need to build things. This is the top 5 items that are going to help you develop a brand or whatnot, and learning from that. It's almost like purgatory, to be honest, but learning from it.
Dude, I love it. And I'm sorry, I know I'm not supposed to, but I love the fact that you dove in and you were talking about documentation. That's everything. Being able to record, being able to identify and see cycles. And so that way, whether you need to repeat it and 10x it, or if you need to start pivoting, once you see the signs, you can identify them, you can go. I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm off my soapbox. Amazing. So what is your favorite business book?
I think last time I said Think and Grow Rich because it's all about mentality. I haven't been reading as much recently. I've been all about podcasts. So here's my piece of advice, and it doesn't answer your question. Start listening to podcasts about other founders. You could read their autobiographies or their biographies, and there's so many out there. There's been so many entrepreneurs, right? But as a genre, if you want to speed date an entrepreneur, go listen to someone summarizing what that person went through, the challenges that they faced and overcame, the legacy that they have on the world, and then maybe all the intricacies of the day-to-day operations. This is how they stood out in the market. This is how they balanced the books. This is how they avoided going into debt, whatever that might be. There's many podcasts out there. There's one called Founders, literally. And, I've listened to 70 episodes of it. It's a lot of hours. They're each about an hour. So it's 70 hours. I usually put it on while I'm working out. And I'll just absorb knowledge from founders that you never even think of, like Levi Jeans or the guys behind IBM, which I don't remember their names. Hopefully I remember their lessons. But you just keep hearing consistency between these stories, even if you don't remember exactly who did what, about how they never quit. They outworked the rest of the group. They tried not to go into too much debt. They were willing to take risks. They stayed lean and mean and agile as a company so that they could navigate the changing markets. All these great points that you're going to extract over time.
Love that. What is your favorite part of owning or running your business?
I think it's the ability for me to generate a vision, something that I see, that I really believe in. And then I have the authority to navigate the business and all of its resources and its people towards that. There's so many people in life who have a dream for something. They wish the world would be that way, or that they could see themselves in such a position, but they don't have any of the authority to actually accomplish it. What's really nice about having the business is that I get to guide it in that direction. And if I can rationalize the reason why we're going in that direction, then generally speaking, it happens. And I think that's so cool to have that autonomy to live things out the way that I would prefer that they are manifested in the real world.
So good. 2-part question coming at you. What is something new that you've implemented into your business that's driven success? And on that same topic, what KPIs are you tracking?
So this is not quite part of the business, but it is. And it is posting on LinkedIn. I have made a plan to consistently post, and I know what type of posts I want out there, whether it's talking about industry problems or recapping events that I've spoken at. And I think to let people see the way that I think and speak, to hear from the horse's mouth problems that the industry is facing and how we're overcoming it, and to add that voice and those touch points, it's been really worthwhile for the business. I've met a lot of people, whether they're investors or customers or partners of some sort, that saw a post and then they saw a few posts from me, and maybe they saw me on a podcast and they got to meet me in person at an event. And next thing you know, they feel really comfortable around me doing business, and we have something in the works to work together. So I think being sort of a an influencer or a thought leader, which I don't really like either of those terms, but I think both of those things have been a good strategy for the business in terms of its growth, maturation, and earning its place in the market.
Love it. I'm sitting here trying to dial back and think about all the different things that we covered in this, and there was so much info that we went over. It was cool hearing your story from the beginning of, like we said, starting with that initial challenge, growing up and doing something crazy, then entering the business world and going through challenges, building a business, pivoting here, pivoting there, persevering, growing, all the lessons you've learned, fundraising, seeing these cycles, just so much stuff that we touched on that I thought was awesome. So I have two final questions for you. One, do you have any final advice for somebody? And two, where can people find you and get in touch with you?
So my final advice, and I kind of skipped over this throughout any of my entrepreneurial journey, but I'm really studious. I am always studying and researching. I make a hobby out of it, actually. When I'm eating dinner, I'm not scrolling social media, I'm scrolling Wikipedia. Late at night, I'll be watching YouTube videos about how stuff works. During the day, I'm reading reports or expert insights about the industry. I'm always absorbing information. And because I'm adjacent to so many industries, I have this massive obligation to learn about technology and construction practices and startup concepts and what's happening in the Hong Kong government. There's all these different things that I have to constantly learn, but that is why I am an expert, and experts get to speak a little bit more. And going back to the thought leadership, that means that I get to represent my company a little bit more. So trying to acquire knowledge rapidly and thoroughly, and then being able to apply that as well has been super worthwhile. So I wasn't great in school, which is ironic. I was, and then I realized this is really boring. I don't feel like writing more analysis of essays or poems or whatever it was at the time. But now that I'm studying stuff that I love and can see how I use that knowledge, it is such a great use of my time. If you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is still my number one place to do that. If you look up Matthew Schneider, you're going to see my profile out there, my big smile on my profile picture. That's really the most active place. If you want to check out what we're doing at Building, you can go to www.building.inc, spelled INC, like incorporated, and see what we're up to. Send us a message or check out our social media pages there as well.
I love it. And for everybody that's out there that's listening, I encourage you to do so. Reach out to Matthew, ask questions, continue to dive in, reach out to Cole, reach out to myself. We'd love to help. It's all about giving back. Don't try to do it alone. Don't try to go on this journey. Don't try to go on the voyage by yourself. None of this me, I stuff. It's a we. Let us help you. Let us try to figure out how we can find some common ground and move forward. Again, moving that needle. Matthew, it's been a pleasure. It's been a privilege, and it's truly an honor to have you back. Continue to rock with us. Thank you so much for coming on stage with us.
Absolutely. Nate, Cole, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Take care. For everybody out there that's listening, get home safely, and we will see you on the next episode of Forged in Fire. Take care. Peace.